I love being American, y'all, and there's no time like December when you realize that you're just a little bit different. And everybody says that Christmas is all about Jesus, but suddenly it's become about Santa and snowmen and lying to your kids about the presents that came from your own hard-earned money, all while pumping the consumer industry like it's a second religion. When I started coming back into the deen when I turned 18, and what I would do is that I would take December as my Jesus month because I want to actually learn about Isa during this time. Because as Muslims, we do believe in him. We do love him. But because of everybody else and what they're doing, we rarely study his life, his habits, his simplicity, his message, same way that we should be doing like we do with the other prophets. And if you know anything about me, we do not let the system rule us, okay? The environment should not be ruling us. And what I talk about is systems. The environment impacts you, the history impacts you. So that's what this episode is going to be about. Today, I'm going to share my 4 favorite things about Jesus, or Isa alayhi salam, especially the one that made me cry real crocodile tears, okay? Because the life of Yahya and Zechariah, or John the Baptist and Zechariah, am I mixing them up? I don't know. The way that they passed away really makes my heart hurt, okay? And once I've read this, what happened during Isra and Miraj, or during the ascension of the Prophet ﷺ's time, just completely I had to take 2-3 days just thinking about it, because that gave me so much peace in my heart. So without further ado, let's get started. So from the moment of his birth, Isa alayhi salam, I'm going to say Jesus moving forward, defended his mother, Maryam. Okay, so the Quran paints this scene, right? So she returns to her people. She had a very hard birth. She was saying, wish I was dead during this. You guys, I just went through childbirth number 3, one of the hardest ones. She had a virgin pregnancy. No man had touched her. The angels gave her the baby. And she has to do all of this stuff without an epidural. Without an epidural. She was saying in Surah Maryam, you can read this, she was saying that she wished she passed away because she must have been really, really young. So now she's holding this baby. She's going back into the community and they're going to be looking at her like she was crazy, and they sure did. How come you're not unrighteous? How come you have this baby in your hands? They start accusing her. And what happens? By Allah's will, baby Jesus start speaking. I am indeed a servant of God, and he has made me dutiful to my mother. He could have said many things in that miraculous moment, but he chose to highlight 2 things: servitude to God and respect for his mother. So his characteristic was that he was never arrogant. He never acted above his mother. He spent his life honoring her. He cared about her. He walked beside her. Teaching that religion without that spiritual component, without the humility component, is hollow. So when we often think about being prophetic, we often imagine, miracles. They do all of these things, right? But the most complete of believers in faith are those with the best of character. And Jesus embodied that in the way that he dressed, in the way that he moved. And it started with how he treated his family, especially his mother. The other part of him that I really like is the fact that he wasn't a prophet who built empires or armies. He's been known to walk barefoot, he wore simple wool clothing, and he slept wherever. Him and his disciples lived off of the land, the figs, they sipped on water, on prayer. There's a narration within Islamic text in which his disciples asked him, "O Spirit of God, where is your home?" He replied, "My home is in the earth, my clothes is fear of God, my pillow is a rock, my food is hunger, my lamp is the moon, and my mount are my feet." He lived with his companions, not above them. This was something that the Prophet ﷺ also did, in the sense that when the people would come around and they'd be like, well, who's your leader? They couldn't distinguish him because he looked, dressed, ate, and did everything like them. And oftentimes when it comes to leadership, we are always taught, you should be wearing the clothes. You should be sitting on like a mount so that people can identify you. It's all about self-identification to look good in other people's eyes. But what Jesus ﷺ did was the fact that he was amongst the people. That simplicity of life. I read this one book that taught me this, okay? It was a Christian pastor. He wanted to learn more about Jesus, and he realized that he wasn't living like Jesus. And he spent, the whole book teaching and showing and how all of that stuff. And I was like, wow, this is something that we should know about, okay? It's on the Knowledge Hub, inshallah, if you want it. He washed his own clothes. He cooked his own food. He walked amongst them. So he led by service. And that is the challenge for us today. We're often chasing influence, becoming an influencer, right? Standing up, being seen. But we forget that real leadership is quiet. It is human. It is being kind. It is that stuff that people do not praise, that the people don't know anything about. That is what makes you great. The next one, the Quran describes Zakaria alayhi salam prayed for a child, and Allah granted him John the Baptist, as he's known, or Yahya, who would walk later alongside Isa, right? They say that he taught him this. And they were cousins, both prophets, both born miraculously because the wife was really old when it came to Zakaria, right? And both lived detached from the world, like they could have understood that. Now there is something in Ibn Kathir, I don't know if it's true or not, okay? This is not a hadith. In which he narrates that Yahya alayhi salam once saw Jesus and said, "Oh brother, you fast too much." And Jesus replies, "Oh brother, you eat too little." A little gentle humor between them, and which is shows something profound, that you should have balance. Even in their devotion, they corrected each other with love. Their bond reminds us that faith is not a competition, it is companionship. Both were treated unjustly, and Yahya was killed unjustly. But their legacy and what they did, and if we do not continue to learn about them, it gets lost. To that note, when I found out how Yahya died, as well as how Zechariah died, I would have like real pains within my heart, because the question was, when you're doing something good for people and you are being killed for it, right? You're being assassinated. Does that mean that people who do good, and this is something that colonizers have taught us, right? Subjugated us to, this is what they do. It's a power move in which, you know, when you speak up and you try to do something good, they cut you off. Now there's this narrative that we have, the good die young, right? We always say that, right? It's unjustly being taken out. So this is something that has been on my mind for years, you guys, okay? For years. So when I'm reading the Sirah, so here is what this says, okay? So alayhi salam, for those who don't know, means peace be upon them, okay? This is something of respect that you say. The other thing is Isra and Miraj, means the ascension. So after everything was going horrible during the Prophet ﷺ's time, he was able to go into the heavens. And when he was going into the heavens, he had to go through the 7 levels, and he ran into each prophet during that time. This is in real time. So this is what happened. The Prophet then entered the 2nd heaven and had the same initiation with other gatekeepers. So the angels were gatekeepers. But this time, Prophet Yahya and Isa, John the Baptist, and Jesus were behind the door, who replied, "Welcome, O righteous brother." You can just read over that, you guys, but I didn't. They are in heaven together. Do you understand? He was killed before him, and they are together, living their best lives. What? I cried real tears, okay? Because if you've ever had somebody that you loved pass away, just that concept, wow. The other ones were alone, I believe. Okay, when you love somebody and, you know, you think everything is going to turn out bad, but the fact that they are together, like their souls are together, I don't know which state of being they're in, but that says so much. You'll never lose. The believers never lose. And that's a narrative that, you know, the modern world teaches us that we have to break from. And this really helped me break from that. Where the good people do continue on living, and that they do keep on continuing to have an impact. My favorite thing about him is that he didn't own a home. He didn't hoard food for tomorrow. He walked from village to village. He called people to remember God. His simplicity was what made him amazing, okay? He lived on that. Can we do that today? Because, you know, every time I say these things, I always have to think about, you know, how time has changed and how we can live like that. I think we can to a certain extent. But this whole obsession of, you know, what he says, let tomorrow worry about itself, and all of these concepts that you find in today's Bible is something of necessity. These are concepts that we don't even think about. Like, it's foreign. But what would happen? You know, we don't even try it. Oh, that's just stupid. We have all of these comments like, you need to, you know, have savings. You need to do all of this stuff. And I do have savings. Don't get me wrong. But on the little things, like not knowing what meal you're going to cook tomorrow, and is that okay? Or do you have to plan that every single moment? Not knowing what will happen when you walk out the door. Is that a cause for anxiety, so much so that you don't leave? More importantly, what's happening right now, we have a lot of anxiety issues in which we don't even try new things. You want to get the job, but you're not even applying. You're not putting in the moves. You're not putting in the work, right? His simplicity is a show of his faith, right? He lived so simply and he didn't worry about tomorrow's food and all of that stuff. We could get so much from this. I would talk about how the Prophet ﷺ lived, but let me give him his due, let me give him his space and not talk about that. But one of the biggest things I was reminded of was that, all prophets lived very similarly, in that there is nothing wrong with living simply. Living simply is something that we should be aiming to. And that's what that book by the Christian pastor really reminded me of as well, in that we're not doing that. We're so capitalistic. We're so materialistic, right? One person said, I was reading another book, is that there are two spectrums. You become more materialistic or more spiritual. So the more materialistic you become, the further away you are from connection to God. And I was like, hold up. That's kind of true, because you're always, if you're focused on the dunya, that's the language that we use, then you're not focused on the hereafter, because you're thinking about tomorrow. What am I going to do and gain tomorrow? Now, there's a healthy balance. Do not get me wrong. But that obsession or that exclusive mindset, I think I'm more concerned about the exclusive mindset of being in a state of anxiety and fear and having no trust and putting that burden on yourself, which humans should not be bearing, is a problem. So living simplistically, taking away all of these things that you do not need. For instance, right now, the biggest movement that we have is not being materialistic through minimalism. You don't have that much stuff and clutter in your house. That is one way you can do it. I had another friend who would give up meat for a certain amount of time because meat is a sign of luxury. So there's certain things, little habits that you can implement or test and experiments that you can put in your life in order to live like this. And I want us to think more about this. I don't want it to be all concept, but there are certain habits that you can do, and I do them. If you look at my habit tracker, I have a list of them. In the habit planner also, I have a list of things that I do in order to live simply, because you are putting these burdens upon yourself and you can simplify. And maybe then you can taste the sweetness of all of the things that all of these religious books talk about, that peace, that inner deep peace. So in conclusion, when I say these are my favorite things about Jesus, I do not mean miracles or mythology, all of that stuff. I mean the way that he lived, the way he honored his mother, the way he walked humbly with those who were amongst them, the way he loved his cousin, Yahya, John the Baptist, and Zechariah, the way he lived so simply that his peace did not depend on anything but God. So maybe this December, when the world is celebrating that version of him, you can take a quiet moment to remember the real Jesus, the man of humility, mercy, and solitude. May Allah make our hearts like the heart of Jesus, our faith like his simplicity, and our love like his, for you alone. World may talk about Jesus every December, but only the believers remember him all year long. I really think this is something that needs to be shared with the world, so make sure to share it. Subscribe to hear new things that you don't hear, because a lot of people want to fight. I'm tired of the fighting. Let's take out the things that are useful and applied in our lives, okay? The reason I'm doing this, even though my account says IU habits, is that our beliefs and our thoughts and how we think of the world impact our habits. And our habits also impact our beliefs. It all works together as a system. So unless we can clarify all of this junk and take out the value, extract that value and apply it into our day-to-day life, and every single person is going to be different. They're going to be taking away something different. Then we're not going to have the life that we are proud of, and you only have one life. If you want more, make sure to stick around. Until next time, peace.